A newcomer that's been teased for quite a number of weeks now in previous videos as of time of recording. It is the Beef type, BEF00 Hodoyoishimofuri, or as I'm simply going to refer them as from this point forward, Big Beef. With a kit of Meteor, a brand new skill, double break hammer, tank legs, and the leg ability of Adversity, which buffs leg stats up to 12%, excluding HP and heavy limit of course, for every debuff or ailment active on the user. Now I'm going to be completely real with you. This one was particularly hard to grade for a number of reasons, but it does still have a pretty solid kit at the end of the day, regardless of it having a particular number of disadvantages that I have covered and made my opinions rather well known on in the past. But I will get to that as time goes forward in this video, so just to start at the top and work my way down, Meteor, of course, is a brand new skill to the game. It is a gunpowder-based skill, so it belongs in the same family as missile and napalm-based attacks. It inflicts fire ailment on the user, so essentially it will set you, the user, on fire upon use, but after the initial damage from the first hit. However, it also, for the duration that you remain on fire, every consecutive use of Meteor buffs the damage of the attack by 1.5. So this is one of those few instances where actually having a negative ailment applied is actually beneficial to you. Not to say that you want to willingly set yourself on fire to make use of this attack, but the extra damage will definitely come in handy if you choose to make use of it on more than one particular occasion. And that actually does tie in very nicely to the Adversity leg ability, which means there's going to be more than one part that's going to benefit from this particular negative ailment that you're inflicting yourself with. Break hammer, we've seen it before, and it's always going to be a conventional heavy punish attack you can generally never go wrong with. Gravity attributes, so same family as break, press and break, which means it'll have a higher success rate upon a certain metaforce threshold being met. And of course, it is a fantastic heavy punish as stated for anyone that's using 2 or more heavy parts when attacking a certain target. If not, it'll deal more rather mediocre damage, I guess, at the latest. But at the very least, that higher success rate does mean that you have a higher chance of inflicting a critical hit. So even if you don't deal a lot of damage at base, the break hammer still does make up for it pretty well conventionally, so that you can use it on pretty much any kind of team that needs a melee fighter. Tank legs, unfortunately, is where things got rather difficult with grading Big Beef. Now, unfortunately, in the past, I have mentioned this before, tank legs, unfortunately, are rather bad. They have no ability to evade whatsoever. They have very poor mobility on top of that. And then to add salt to the wound, you also don't get any particular terrain bonus, positive or negative, on any kind of terrain except cyber. So it makes using tank legs particularly difficult to use at the cost that you have typically more HP for the legs and that you also have much higher shoot and resist stats. However, Big Beef here takes that and chucks it right out the window. So with that, as you see here, the legs for this particular model have a base mobility of 768, which is absolutely unheard of for a tank leg that is fast. Now, you actually cannot evade still, so that much does not change, but that high speed does actually meld pretty well, even with having an average terrain bonus or neutral terrain bonus, I guess, across all terrains. So that 768 will actually be a minimum guarantee, essentially, that a lot of bots, maybe with higher heat and cool stats, can actually still maintain a competitive edge in the realm of speed while still being able to maintain a leg that has particularly high armor. Now, unfortunately, at the cost of the high armor, it does look like that Big Beef also is kind of lacking in the shoot and melee resist departments, where typically a tank leg may have maybe 1200 or 1300 for those stats to help reduce damage. Big Beef's legs, unfortunately, do not have that. So it is a rather interesting trade-off where you trade off your ability to defend and reduce damage for a higher speed count to be able to maintain that competitive edge. So, like I said, it does make grading Big Beef a little difficult, having to factor in everything for this new model, but right from start and at the end of the day, it actually is a pretty solid model, and it's one of the few tank legs I would actively encourage trying to go for or make use of if in the case that you do have to use a tank leg or a pure set in some way, because something else on the kit makes good use of that. As a pure set score, again, a very much so unheard of sense in this case, 7 out of 10 or higher for Big Beef as a pure set. For the Meteor ability, for the gunpowder, with the leg ability on top of that, you can make very good use of setting yourself on fire and then getting an additional buff on top of that. Not just with the damage, but also with your leg stats on top in addition. Break Hammer you can never go wrong with as a conventional melee attack, especially as a heavy punish. So even in this case where you have double Break Hammer, I wouldn't necessarily call it a disadvantage, because in the case if one arm goes out, you can still use the other one. So no real loss here or no real redundancy that's going to hold Big Beef back. As mixed parts, I'd rate it just a little bit higher at an 8 out of 10. Again, in the sense that you can use more or less any part on the build basically anywhere. In particular, if you are going to make use of the head part, I would probably encourage that you make use of the tank legs as well, just so you can make use of the adversity leg ability and get that 1-2 bonus buff going after you use Meteor the first time. But overall, like I said, very largely unheard of that I would rate a tank leg this high, but with a stat spread like this, almost 3,600 HP for the head, about 3,400 per arm, and about 4,500 and more for the legs, it's tanky, it's solid, and it actually does not cost you any speed. So I am genuinely impressed with this set. And if you are if you are kind of on the fence with thinking about if you're going to pull for this one, I would say do it just for the sake of taking that shot in the dark. And if you do end up with something for Big Beef, I think you generally will not be sorry for it.